Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for visiting the 6th Floor Museum at Dealey Plaza today and spending a few minutes of your visit up here on the 7th floor. I hope you've had a chance to see our special exhibit, Colorful Memories, November 22nd Through a Child's Eyes. It's a collection of artwork done about a month after the assassination by a group of first graders in Arizona. And because of this exhibit, for our monthly Living History series this year, we're featuring speakers who have direct childhood memories or connections to President Kennedy and the assassination. And you're in for a real treat today because I am joined by one of my favorite people, a longtime friend of this museum. I was adding up today, and I think this is your 9th program that we have done together over the years. John Sparks has a terrific childhood connection to November 22nd, 1963, but he has another connection as well as an adult. John is a Peabody Award-winning broadcast producer and journalist who's worked at all of the major Dallas-Fort Worth television stations, including about 20 years at the ABC affiliate, WFAA. And in 2018, I think it was, you received the Legends in Journalism Award from the Dallas Press Club. So a very distinguished broadcast journalist from the Dallas area joins us today. But we're actually going to start our story when John was just a wee lad in high school. Please join me in welcoming John Sparks to be our storyteller today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
John, probably against your wishes, we have your high school photograph up here on the screen. Tell us about the school you were attending in 1963.
Well, just before we do that, I want to interject something. You talked about childhood memories. I was the ripe old age of 16 when I saw the president that morning. I was born in '47, so I was 16 years old. So I'm 78 today, folks, and I feel like I'm 13 on the inside, which was younger than when I saw the president. But anyway, the school was a Fort Worth Public Schools, Eastern Hills High School in Fort Worth, on the east side of Fort Worth. The school is still there. It doesn't look as much like it did back then, but it's still there, and the east side is still thriving.
Mm-hmm. And you came from a politically active family. Your dad was pretty big with the Democratic Party.
He was what you call a precinct judge, and a precinct judge meant that on election day, he would run the election for the particular precinct. In Texas, you had a primary election and you had a general election, and paper ballots back then. There wasn't any mail-in or anything else to do, but he would take it, and when people come in, you know, and everybody knew everybody back then anyway. I mean, but you'd check their IDs and all that, everything to make sure that the people, were entitled to vote. But he was quite active in that, and he also. Our congressman at the time was Jim Wright, and you'll see Jim Wright show up in a lot of the footage with the assassination. Jim Wright was the congressman from Fort Worth at the time, and one of the purposes of the visit to Texas, Jim Wright wanted the people of Fort Worth to be able to thank the president for his support in enabling General Dynamics, which is now McDonnell Douglas, to get a government contract for a fighter aircraft that became the F-111. Back then it was known as the TFX, the Tactical Fighter Experimental. And if you've ever listened to the president's speech that morning at breakfast, he makes his speech centers around Fort Worth being a center for defense. And the truth of the matter is, Stephen, that at the time, and my father was working in General Dynamics too, Fort Worth's economy was not diversified. Almost everybody in town, they worked at the aircraft plant. Back in World War II, the B-24s, Consolidated Volte, which became Convair, which became General Dynamics. They built the B-24s, they built the B-36, which was the first SAC intercontinental bomber. Before the B-52, there was the B-36, and it was a Fort Worth product also. And so, because the economy was not diversified, there were two bids for this F-111, the TFX. Boeing out of Seattle and General Dynamics out of Fort Worth. And the truth is that if Fort Worth had not gotten that contract, you could pretty much roll up the carpet in Fort Worth, Texas, because everybody in town worked for and it put a scare into everybody. It enabled, the scare enabled everybody to, and the Chamber of Commerce and all to realize that the economy had to be diversified, or we run this same problem all the time. So you had the what I guess is Miller Brewery today, but it's a Carling Black Label. They brought a brewery in. Motorola came in, built a big radio factory there.
But Fort Worth was a very important stop on the Texas trip.
Oh, yeah.
And Kennedy spent the night in Fort Worth. He arrived just before midnight on Thursday the 21st, woke up the morning of Friday, November 22nd at the Hotel Texas downtown. And that is where you had a chance to see him. We are looking at a picture of you from the Eastern Hills High School Band. You are the young man
with the horn-rimmed glasses, looking up like a geek.
Right there. And so, John, the Eastern Hills High School Band performed at that breakfast, but they weren't supposed to. It was supposed to be TCU, wasn't it?
That's correct. The Texas Christian University, the band, the TCU Horn Frog Band, was to play at the breakfast. And there'd been some rumbling that I mentioned to you about Jim Wright and wanted to thank the president, but there was some talk about, or some rumblings about, is this a official visit by the President of the United States, or is it a political event? And they're getting some pushback. And so the chancellor at TCU decided that rather than take the heat, he was pulling his band from the breakfast. Well, my band director, a man named Ronnie Martin, high school band director, he was over in the band hall at TCU when the band director, Jim Jacobson, got a call from the chancellor, and he was outside the band director's office there at TCU, but he couldn't help but overhear the conversation, and he realized what was going on, that they were pulling the band. Well, Ronnie Martin was a man that thought on his feet. He'd also done some Democratic Party politics, and he also knew some folks in the Secret Service. So he went around the corner, commandeered a phone, called a friend of his that was in the Secret Service, and he said, listen, you don't know it yet, but you're not going to have a band tomorrow at the breakfast. I got a band. Do you want a band? And the guy thought for me and said, yeah. Well, so Ronnie Martin unilaterally booked our high school band to play that breakfast the next morning. Then he realized after he'd done it, it's always better to beg forgiveness and seek permission, but he realized he still had to get the okay from the high school principal. So the high school principal was one of the good old boys named Roy Johnson. His nickname was Sugar Bottom, by the way. And so Mr. Martin went to go see old Sugar Bottom, and he told him what had happened. And so Roy Johnson said, He picked up the phone and said, I better call the school superintendent down the ad building and see if it's okay. And you could see the wheels spinning in his head. And he looked up to Ronnie Martin, our band director, and said, now this isn't a political event, is it? And Ronnie Martin just smiled and said, well, you know, he is the president of the United States. You're right, we'll do it. And he slammed down the receiver, never made the phone call, and the rest is history.
Wow. And so you guys in the band, you were a trumpet player. You found out the day before and had to learn Hail to the Chief, right?
That's right. 6th period English class, I got a call on the loudspeaker. With all members of the band, please report to the band hall immediately, if not sooner. And so we went down there. We thought, what's going on? You know, we all know what the football show is going to be at halftime, which was our big thing at that time of the year, November. And we were passed out music to Hail to the Chief. And we went through it a few times, and then Ronnie Martin says to the band, you're to be here at 6:30 tomorrow morning. You're going to get on buses, and we're going down to the Hotel Texas in downtown Fort Worth. We're going to play for the President of the United States. So, wow.
So we're looking at a picture of the Grand Ballroom there at the Hotel Texas, and pictures of the Eastern Hills High School Band are really virtually impossible to find. This is one of the few pictures where you can barely see the band in that extreme right over there. I'll zoom in a little bit. You can just make out the tubas back there in the back, but John Sparks is back there as a trumpet player in the band. So this was a Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce breakfast.
Right.
$3 tickets for breakfast to see the president, which
high dollar, right?
Adjusted for inflation is about $32 today to go have breakfast with the president. John, we have some terrific TV footage from the morning of the breakfast, and we're going to get to hear John Sparks and the rest of the Eastern Hills High School Band perform Hail to the Chief when President Kennedy entered the ballroom. And keep in mind, this is the last time that Hail to the Chief is ever to be officially performed for President John F. Kennedy. The next time it would be performed was during his funeral services. So let's take a listen to the smooth sounds of John Sparks and the Eastern Hills High School Band.
When the president walks in, they will play Hail to the Chief. Here comes the president. As you may have noticed, Mrs. Kennedy did not enter with the president. So far, we have no indication of where she may be. And I can tell you from where we are standing, there are quite a few ladies who appear to be quite disappointed that Mrs. Kennedy is not here. I am sure that if she does not appear, the president will explain the reason for her absence. He may have changed his suit coat when he entered the building from the parking lot attendant appearance across the street. He was quite damp from the rain. He was the only member of the official party that did not wear a raincoat. But as he walked by me here, I noticed that his coat was dry and there were no rain spots on it, so he may have gone to his suite to change the suit coat.
So rare footage. We don't often see such extended clips from the Fort Worth breakfast, but there's some great trumpet playing, John. I could really hear you in there. This is black and white footage, black and white photographs, but of course you were there and saw the president in living color that day. What did he look like compared to the way he looked on TV?
Well, on TV he looked black and white, just like you saw. He had red, ruddy cheeks. Now, I understand that that was because of the Addison's disease that he was suffering from, but he looked healthy. He looked tanned. He bigger than life. I mean, it was really, I'll never forget, seeing him in person. Of course, we're lined up. We're far at the back of the hall. Ronnie Martin's on a chair looking at the kitchen where the president walks out. He's getting the signal from the Secret Service guy and we got our eyes on Ronnie Martin when we start playing. But after the breakfast was over, we got to go out on to watch the motorcade leave. And Stephen, I was about as close to the President Kennedy as you and I are sitting here. And it was just amazing. And Jackie Kennedy, she was very, very popular First Lady. Eisenhower and Mamie Eisenhower, Dwight Eisenhower and Mamie were the President and First Lady before the 1960 election. They were old folks like I am today. I mean, they look like your grandfather. And here, John Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy were young folks. And I will tell you this, that she's a very attractive lady, but she looked more petite on television than in person. She was she was large herself. Very, very nice figure, don't get me wrong. But But she on TV, and she had she spoke very demure. Many of you may have seen the Charles Collingwood television special that she gave the country a tour of the White House, and she spoke very soft. Or if you've heard the Von Meter comedy album, they did a pretty good Jackie on that. I mean, and so, but it was amazing to see him in person.
Well, speaking of Mrs. Kennedy, you may have noticed in the last clip they comment on her absence. She did arrive at the breakfast a few minutes late, and we're going to take a look at that clip when Mrs. Kennedy arrives to thunderous applause.
Is an event that I know all of you have been waiting for. You know what I mean?
As you can tell from the reaction, that's Mrs. Kennedy coming in. She's been standing outside in the kitchen waiting for the introduction of the guests at the head table to be completed. Now she is moving up to the front of the ballroom, mounting the dais. For the ladies in the audience, she's wearing a pink outfit trimmed in black. If I knew more about it, I'd tell you the kind of material. It looks like a nubby material, wool of some type. And with the chilly weather outside today, this is probably very appropriate. There's some very happy women here today who made the trip down to see her, and now they've seen her.
2 years ago, I said that, introduced myself in Paris by saying that I was the man who had accompanied Mrs. Kennedy to Paris. I'm getting that same sensation as I travel around Texas. Nobody wonders what Lyndon and I wear.
It was hard to hear the band, but you were playing when she entered. I believe you were playing Everything's Coming Up Roses from the musical Gypsy.
Right.
Which was a pretty new song at the time. I think that was like 59, so this was 63 when
We were playing that. Everything's Coming Up Roses was part of our halftime show, so we had all memorized that. So Ronnie Martin, pulled that out of the arsenal and said, "That's what we'd play if she came in." And so we did. Of course, later you saw the picture of her with the roses, of course, after the assassination and all. It's pretty tragic, but yeah, that's what we did.
What an extraordinary moment for you. Of course, in retrospect, you didn't realize it at the time, of course, but this was to be the president's last public appearance, his last breakfast, his last speech. You were in the room for all of that. There's one moment in particular that is quite poignant. It was when the president was given a gift at the end of the breakfast, and I have one more clip to share with you from the Fort Worth breakfast. We'll take a look at this when he is to receive a special gift from the host.
Mr. President, your visit with us in Fort Worth today, the things you have said have refreshed and renewed our appreciation of your great leadership and courage. You have brought rain to moisten our pastures and our fields. You have brought sunshine in our hearts. We know that you don't wear a hat. We couldn't let you leave Fort Worth without providing you with some protection against the rain.
put it on in the White House on Monday. If you'll come up there, you'll have a chance to see it there.
Of course, a funny line then, but very poignant considering what happened just a short time later. You mentioned you saw the president right outside the hotel. That's when this photograph, this wonderful color picture, you can kind of see those ruddy cheeks you were talking about.
Stephen, let me point out something in that picture. Notice the car that he's driving. It's a white Lincoln Continental. It is not the bubble top that he was in Dallas. He mentioned about, in his little quip about not wanting to put the hat on. He said you could come and see him on Monday. I knew the man that loaned that car to them to use in Fort Worth. And he got a call from the Secret Service 2 weeks before the visit, and they had found out that he had a Lincoln Continental convertible. Would he loan it for the president? They promised that they would return it after they drove out to Carswell Air Force Base to go on Air Force One to go to Dallas, and that they promised him that for doing that the president would write him a thank you letter, which of course he never got. And besides never getting it, when he got his car back, they had put holes in the fenders where the little presidential flags, the stanchions are in front. So now, Bill Poston was crazy to sell that car. He could have made a fortune off of it, but he didn't make anything off of it. But he was all upset because of getting that car back.
I believe he also told the story that the Secret Service insisted on putting brand new tires on that car,
Yep.
which they promptly removed before they gave it back to him. They put his old tires back on the car.
Yeah.
Well, John, take us back to school. It's a short time later, after the excitement of seeing the president in person, that you find out about what happened right here in Dealey Plaza.
I'm at lunch at an American history class, and at lunchtime we're in the cafeteria, the school cafeteria, eating with my friends, and the principal, Mr. Johnson, opens up the speaker, and he announces that he said, many of you know that the band was there to see the president this morning, and that we just gotten news that someone has taken a shot at the president in downtown Dallas. And at that time, it was not confirmed that he had been mortally wounded, and we were later certainly to find out that. But after that, for the rest of the day at high school, we passed classes. You know, you go to first period. Well, we had band, so we went to band, and you went to study hall, and you went to chemistry and algebra and what have you. And so the rest of the afternoon, we passed, the bells would ring and you'd go to each class, but the constant thing over the loudspeaker was the radio coverage of what was going on with the assassination. And of course we learned, heard on the radio that he had been mortally wounded. And it's something you never forget.
This was, for you as a teenager, having just seen this man in person, this really kind of helped to define the idea of death. You've talked about this before.
My grandfather died when I was in the 5th grade, but he was a really old guy, and he had been ill for some time, and we had, it was not a surprise that he had died, but here was somebody that I had seen in the prime of his life, the ruddy cheeks and all that, just a few hours earlier. Now he was dead, and that was pretty sobering. Sidebar story real quick. 2 weeks later, one of the saxophone players in the band committed suicide. And so I had a double dose of death right there within a matter of weeks. And did a lot of soul searching and all about what was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to jump ahead because your story doesn't end in 1963. No. As I mentioned at the beginning, John also has an adult connection to this story, and it is found in these giant 2-inch videotapes. I mentioned that John spent almost 20 years at the ABC affiliate, WFAA-TV here in Dallas. And this man, John Sparks, is responsible for saving that station's 100 hours of Kennedy assassination film and television coverage. It would not exist today were it not for this man. So take us back to the early 80s and tell us how you saved all this Kennedy footage.
I was telling Stephen right before our program started, we had gotten an anchor that she came to work for us, and part of the deal was that her boyfriend came along as part of we got a twofer, I guess. Anyway, the boyfriend was given some executive job up front, and he just proceeded to start cleaning the closets out at the television station. We used to have a full-time carpenter shop there. We had sets for all the programming that we did. We did a lot of live programming back then. We also had upstairs in the production office a lot of videotape. This videotape, it's about a reel there. That's about a 1-hour reel. And it's about 12 to 15 inches in diameter. And it weighs a ton, by the way. But you put it up on a machine, and the tape, you see the brown, it's much like the old audio tape used to be on a reel-to-reel audio recorder. But anyway, I went in one morning and I saw, when I discovered this stuff when I was working in the production office in the summer of 1968. I was an intern in the production department over at the television station. And I graduated from the university in 1969. Short stint with Uncle Sam in the Army, and when I came back, I went to work full time. But when I was working in the production office, I had discovered the Kennedy tapes, and I used to put them up on the machines at work and look at them. I was fascinated by them, and so I knew what was on them, and to see them on the back, they were on pallets at the back door, and I asked the security guard, I said, what are the Kennedy tapes doing back here? Oh, we're throwing those out. And I said, no, you're not. I've always loved history, and I went up to talk to the station manager at the time, a man named Dave Lane. I said, Dave, you can't do this. Well, what? I said, that's history, Dave. You can't throw them out. If you don't save them, I'm taking them home and I'll keep them at my house. And I was prepared to do that. I was glad that they had a change of heart and decided to keep them. But I was going to keep them if they had not decided to do that. And that was in the early 80s. In 1983, I was involved I wanted to recreate, using those tapes, what it was like for those of us that watched television when the assassination took place. First time we had round-the-clock coverage without any commercial stations. Back then, you didn't have all the choices that you have today. There was no internet, there was no cable, there was no satellite television. You had broadcast television, 3 network affiliates in Dallas-Fort Worth, 1 PBS affiliate, 1 independent affiliate, and all you saw was round-the-clock coverage. And the station, we were fortunate because the reason we have the tape, the videotape was in its infancy, but the reason we had a whole lot of videotape on hand was that the television station was a production house. We did produce television commercials. They'd drive a car into the studio and we would videotape commercials. And that's what the production department did, was when they weren't doing programming, was producing commercials that would foot the bill. And so at the time, because we had about, I don't know how many hours, we had 50, 100 hours worth of brand new videotape for the clients that would come in and make their commercials. We make their commercials for them. And so the general manager, a man named Mike Shapiro, called back to the production office and said, I want you to record everything that moves. And so that's how come we had such a collection. It's a fantastic collection.
And there were no copies of this in the 80s, so if it had gotten thrown out as it was about to be done, none of this would exist. I want to show you just a brief compilation of some of the amazing WFAA-TV footage that this man saved for us.
There's Mrs. Kennedy, and the crowd yells, and the President of the United States. And I can see his suntan all the way from here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You'll excuse the fact that I'm out of breath, but about 10 or 15 minutes ago, a tragic thing from all indications at this point has happened in the city of Dallas. Let me quote to you this. And you'll excuse me if I am out of breath. A bulletin, this is from the United Press, from Dallas. President Kennedy and Governor John Connally have been cut down by assassins' bullets in downtown Dallas. They were riding in an open automobile when the shots were fired. The president, his limp body carried in the arms of his wife Jacqueline, has rushed to Parkland Hospital. A gentleman just walked in our studio that I am meeting for the first time as well as you. This is WFAA-TV in Dallas, Texas. May I have your name, please, sir?
My name is Abraham Zapruder.
Mr. Zapruder?
Zapruder, yes, sir.
Zapruder. And would you tell us your story, please, sir?
I got out in, about a half hour earlier and get into a good spot to shoot some pictures. And I found a spot, one of these concrete blocks that I have down near that park near the underpass. And I got on top there. There was another girl from my office. She was right behind me. And as I was shooting, as the president was coming down from Houston Street making his turn, it was about halfway down there, I heard a shot. Then he slumped to the side like this. Then I heard another shot or two. I couldn't say what it was, one or two. And I saw his head practically open up, all blood and everything. And I kept on shooting. That's about all. I'm just sick again.
I think that pretty well expresses the entire feelings of the whole world.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. I can't even imagine what it would be like to not have all that amazing WFAA TV footage. So, John, we are all forever in your debt for saving that. And we're fortunate that that footage is now here. The original 2-inch video and film is all here at the 6th Floor Museum, thanks to a donation by WFAA back in 1998.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, John, for that and for sharing a remarkable story with us today. Please join me in thanking John Sparks for sharing his memories today.
It's a pleasure to be able to see everyone out here today. I'm glad you took the time to come by the museum. They do a wonderful job here at the 6th floor.